Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in sunny Long Beach, California, joined by my good pal, Mircea Murariu, there in Boca Raton, Florida. Hello, sir.
How are you doing, my friend?
I am fantastic. And you know why I'm fantastic?
Why is that?
We are doing two things. Number one, we're doing part 2 of our tournament prep show. We've never split a show in half before.
Yes, very exciting.
But there was so much data that we had to do it. But the second thing is, right now, Mircea, you can see this, but others can't. I have in my left hand right now a brand new, out of the box, Carbon 3 True Foam paddle. It still has the wrapper on the handle. And this paddle, Mircea, is going to go to someone who's listening to this show right this very second.
All right, let's go.
So here's the deal, guys. We are going to have a little contest. I just spoke at a podcasting conference last week and was approached by a gentleman that has a really cool contest app that they can connect to the back end of podcasts. So they did all of this amazing heavy lifting and got it all set up for us. So to win this paddle, you must go to 402p.com/contest. And it's kind of like a scavenger hunt, where if you follow us on Spotify, you get a certain amount of points. If you follow our Instagram account, you get a certain amount of points. Go through whatever they ask you to do. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. And with the people that have done all the things that have the highest point total, we will pick from that kitty, and you will have one of these paddles before the rest of the world can get them. So we'll end the contest on the 31st of January. So we'll do a full week so you have enough time to listen to the show and get your thing together. And then we'll send this sucker to you, and you will be the envy of all of your pickleball friends because you will have an as yet unreleased paddle, and it will be very cool.
This is definitely cool, and that's a great idea, man. Love it.
My quick and dirty, and we're not going to make this a paddle review, but if you ever played with the Carbon 1X, it's softer, meaning it's got a nicer feel to it, but it's got probably 30 or 40% more spin and 30 or 40% more power. So it's really an amazing evolution of, to me, the paddles that they had before.
Yeah, it's definitely an upgrade, especially with respect to the spin. Really generates spin very well. So it's going to be really exciting for one lucky listener.
So here we are, Mircea. We are at part 2 of the tournament breakdown. And on the last episode, if you guys haven't listened yet, go back and listen to it. It was like a really good overview of tournaments, a lot of high-level stuff. And this show, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of tournament prep.
Exactly. The last episode was more of an overall view, if you will, like a 10, 20,000 foot view. And we shared some tournament experience from both of us, which was fun. And this is the nuts and bolts, the ABCs, if you will, of tournament prep and tournament playing.
Well, why don't you kick us off, Mircea? You're a guy who really advocates offline training. So not just on the court, but you'll visit the gym as well and make sure your body is strong for tournament play.
Yeah, I do a lot of non-pickleball related exercise, do a lot of weight training, do a lot of different types of conditioning drills, and do a lot of classes. I really like to cross-train and really work on my flexibility and stability. And I really think we need to do an entire episode on that, to be honest. But long story short is that you definitely need some off-the-court conditioning and weight training and other types of exercise to help improve your stability, your endurance, and also your flexibility and diminish your injury risk. Prehab beats rehab. And that's really what we're looking for. We want to be minimizing our injury risk and maximizing our time on the court.
Well, one thing I love to do, Mircea, is, and I was really in the habit of this for a while, and then I think I got sick. And, sometimes you get sick and you break out of your regular routine of working out and things like that. But I did a couple things. Number one, I can't remember, I got it from Seinfeld or somebody. You wake up, you splash cold water on your face, and you do your age in push-ups. It's a really cool thing. So all of a sudden you just wake up and you bang out, in my case, 53 push-ups. And it's so crazily transformative. It's one of the most basic exercises you can do. And it's so fantastic for certainly your upper body. Then the other thing I would do is there was a 10-minute beginner jump rope workout on YouTube that I followed. In fact, if I can find it, I'll link it up in the show notes. And it combines kind of interval training where you're jumping rope as well as like push-ups, squats, ab stuff in between all this. And you really get blown out and it's a really fantastic workout. And it's like 12 minutes. It's just one of those high intensity interval training kind of workouts. I couldn't believe how much better I felt on the court. And what I just talked about right there is probably less than 15 minutes of working out in that particular day. It's not a ton, but man, did it seem to make a big difference in my game and really in my life.
What we're talking about is the preparation for tournaments, and one category is physical. The other is mental. And we're going to talk about the practical as well and the routines that we're setting up. So we're obviously delving into the physical, where you get into the off-court training, drilling, intentional play, playing with a partner, and the prehab beats rehab, where you're warming up and stretching.
Somebody asked me the other day, I was playing with a new group, and the person that I was talking to actually listened to the podcast. And they said, how long have you been playing? I said, about 4 years. And they said, well, how did you get so advanced in that amount of time? He said, is it drilling? And I go, it's definitely drilling. I think the mentality of switching this from, I really want to have fun and this is a really fun social sport, which it always is, and it can light up your competitive juices and you can have so much fun. But if you do want to get to that next level, whatever that next level is for you, if you play 4 times a week, initially, one of those 4 times should definitely be drilling. I think the further you go up the timeline in terms of like duper, in terms of how much experience and how good you are, that really starts to flip. And I know that some pros I know, if they play 4 times a week, they're drilling 3. But most of the pros I know are probably playing 6 and they're drilling 5 or 4 of the 6. Or they're doing very intentional drilling every time they get on the court, followed by some rec play to work out some of the things that they do. But the bottom line is your drilling should be much more intentional and it should be scheduled.
Absolutely. And you get to see it more and more. One thing that I will say, and there's really no specific defined ratio that you should have between drilling and playing. You really need both. So whatever works for you is something that you have to figure out for your play style. We all require different things, but whatever works for you, but you definitely need a combination of drilling and rec play, but also intentional rec play. One thing that you need is quality drilling. And what I've seen people making mistakes with time and time again is drilling faulty technique. So you'll have 2 players, they go out there, they're drilling, and they're completely using faulty technique. And what happens is while you think you had a successful drill session, then you go play, or you put yourself in an even more stressful environment like a tournament, or a tournament where it's the semifinals or the finals and it's 8-all, 9-all in the third, and your technique breaks down because you have faulty technique. So you really need to pay attention to what kind of drilling you're doing and making sure your technique is optimal. And that might be getting a lesson from a quality coach. It might be feedback from your partner. It might be videotaping and watching it back. But that is really, really important.
You and I saw that. We recorded an episode from the kind of a deck above Los Cab, and we actually saw a couple of people that I know that were drilling, and we watched. You were like, yeah, they've got really bad technique. He's drilling something incorrectly right now. So I did love what you said right there about maybe do it once with a coach so they can at least get you pointed in the right direction. I really like that. And then I always say to my drilling partners, and it's kind of a joke based on what we've heard in the world, if you see something, say something. If you see me doing something wrong and you think I should fix it, say something. And I've actually drilled with people, dude, that don't want the feedback. And I just think, why are we here if you don't want the feedback? I can see what you're doing wrong right now. So anyway, the point is, I'm very much a person that wants someone to give me the info. I'm curious your thought, though. I think maybe above a 4-5 level, or probably 4.0 to 4.5, 4.5 plus, you don't have to be the exact same level as your drilling partner. You guys can both get out what you need to, even if there's a disparity between the talent level of each person. True or false?
100%. I mean, using myself as a perfect example, I mean, drilling with JW in Georgia when I was coaching them regularly, and also Dylan often because JW was playing with Dylan, I was out there as one of the drilling partners, and we got a ton out of it, especially for warm up, and I got a ton out of it, and they probably got less, obviously, but still, the types of drills that we can do really can benefit you, even if you're not quite the exact same level. Obviously, you can't be a beginner practicing with a pro, but yes, you can definitely have successful drilling and successful practice with players of different ability. And interestingly enough, when you're coming up, I think it's good to get a combination of rec play or drilling with different levels, both above and below. What can happen is if you are playing with players that are all above your level, and perhaps you're being targeted or you're being just attacked constantly, it can really affect your confidence. I've had some players say to me that they get a lot out of practicing with players that are slightly below their level because they can work on things more easily, but also you need to challenge yourself. So you need to have some combination thereof. But ideally, we all want to play with better players. You have to keep in mind that if they're much better, it can sometimes affect your confidence. But this kind of leads us into the intentional play. And the intentional play is really something that's important for tournament preparation. And what I mean by this is that you're out there with intent in terms of setting up patterns for you and your partner. Ideally, you find a partner that you really vibe with well, that is complementary both in style and personality. And if you're able to find someone locally, that's a huge win because you can practice with them, obviously. If you are unable to find someone locally and you have a tournament that you're traveling to and you've talked to someone online, the more that you talk to them online, the more that you review some videos together, the more communication you have, the better your chances of having a successful partnership. But if you're playing with someone locally, you really want to set up some times where you are playing tournament style games, where at critical times you are hitting shots that you and your partner generally know where the ball is going.
I'm like a chameleon in a lot of ways, where if I play with really good players, my game tends to elevate and I reach a higher level. And if I play like full-on rec play, sometimes the open courts at where I go, Los Cab, it goes from 2.5 to 4.5 on those courts, and you never know what you're going to get. It's a bit of a grab bag. And I very often play exactly to whatever the least common denominator is. And I don't know why that is, but I just do tend to do that. I don't know if I'm taking the plays off or I don't work on my footwork. So I do have to really be intentional when I play those things. The problem is, in my respect, your partner's not where you expect them to be. They don't hit the shots you expect them to hit. The other team doesn't hit a shot you'd ever see in the normal play that you would have. So sometimes it can get a little bit tough in that respect. What I really like is when you can partner up with another team that are also partners in tournaments, and you guys can play, all right, let's do this. Let's stay the same side. And like you said, play a real tournament style foursome. And I think that is a really cool way to prep for a tournament.
Absolutely. And it's really critical because communication you develop during practice really translates into how you're going to do it during the tournament. And I really say this a lot, and I said this in the National Pickleball League when I was doing a lot of coaching with my fellow players this year. I kept saying that if you're not doing it in practice, it's really hard to implement it in tournaments.
Let's talk about the mental side, Mircea, which we focused on a little bit in the last episode, where nerves can really get in the way of tournament play. All of a sudden, you're realizing you have an entire different perspective on this game when, as you're 8-8 in the third game, it gets really, really nervy and it gets really weird to play. So we've got to make sure that our mental game is dialed in. And I always go back to routine. Anything that I can do to physically go through the exact same thing, whether I'm serving or hitting a backhand dink or whatever, I tend to want to rely on that for tight situations. You have talked about a number of times about just being grateful and showing gratitude while you're on the court and just being like, wow, I can't believe I get to do this right now. And that helps you kind of calm your nerves down.
This dovetails perfectly into what I was just talking about. The more you're able to control the variability, the less anxiety you're going to feel. And if you've gotten a chance to play with your partner, either at home, ideally, or let's just say before the tournament, and you're able to communicate well, this gives you more comfort. And that's the one cool thing about playing doubles pickleball is that you have someone with you that you can rely on, that has your back. You want to count on your partner and have your partner count on you and encourage each other. And by communicating, you're able to decrease your nerves. For example, this past week I played with Jose DeRisi, and Jose and I tell each other what we're going to do right before we serve. We are playing some matches and I would say, okay, Jose, drive to the guy that's coming up, or I'm driving to so-and-so's backhand. That little communication or that specific communication really helps your nerves because you already have a target. So if it's 9-all in the third, you know what your partner is going to do. And that gives you a target. Like, let's target so-and-so's backhand. Those are all key things that are part of the mental side of the game. That, and also focus on your breathing. Just take some deep breaths. Again, gratitude, joy. Think about the joy of pickleball, how great it is to be out there, how great it is to have a good partner ideally, and that you're in it together. All these things are factors that I use to help minimize nerves, anxiety, and maximize the best patterns for you to win at critical times.
Yeah, I love that. And let's talk a little bit about the practical side of this. And I think one of the things that we do as maybe someone who's newish to tournaments is that some people completely change their routines because it's a tournament. They'll eat different things, they'll go through different warm-ups, et cetera, et cetera. You can't really do that in a tournament. Part of tournament prep is going through whatever routine you need before, like when you're going to your rec play. And I'll tell you, here's a perfect example of this. Is that it's very easy in my world for me to show up at my courts and it's 6:45 at Los Cab. There's 120 people there. You know, there's a huge amount of courts and there's games going on all over the place. And I get there and I fill my water bottle and 3 of my buddies go, come on, let's go. And I go, I'm not going to do that yet, because what I've discovered in the last month or two is that if I don't spend 5 to 10 minutes on the stationary bike before I play, I'm not going to play well. So I'm willing to sacrifice whatever that first game is. And sometimes it's like not just the first game, but they end up finding their fourth and they go off and they play all night. I'm okay with that because I would rather that than A, me get injured, or B, just not play well because I know my legs and my knees and my lower body's not warmed up. So when I do a tournament, I will guarantee you that, I mean, assuming I have enough time and I get there early enough, which is obviously part of this, there's no exercise bike. You're going to see me running around. I'm going to be running around the venue. I'm going to be lapping a court. I'm going to be doing some plyometric exercises and just getting my legs some blood flow, getting my quads some blood flow, because I know that the way I play the best is to have a lot of burst. And it's certainly not going to happen if my knees hurt, which they will do if I just get on and start playing.
Yeah, and you've brought up the most important factors. Identify what works for you. And also, it's helpful to ask your partner, what do you need? For myself, I don't need quite as much warm-up as some of my other partners, but I will say, how much time do you need? Tell me when you need me to be there, and I will be there.
So to add to that, Mircea, a lot of times people really, quote-unquote, warm up in the first game. They don't have the full warm-up that they might need. But the first game, you know, we used to say, well, get the trash out. And that's what the first game is. You can't really do that in a tournament because they always matter. Every single game matters in a tournament. So you really have to make sure you are warmed up by the time, you know, it's 0-0-2.
100%. And I start in either if I'm home or hotel room, if I'm traveling, I start off with stretching and using the Yobo and this other bag we have where you have stretching bands. So I start my warm up wherever I'm at home. And then I get to the facility, meet my partner, and we get on the court. And you can also find courts locally. That's one of the things that I would suggest is look up some courts whenever you're traveling that are nearby, or ideally get to the venue and try to warm up at the venue the day before to get some rec play and get used to the venue. One of the things you might have to do is court hop, where you find a match that's about to be finished and you hop on as quickly as you can, and you do both cross court and straight ahead dinks, and then you do some fast hands, and then you do some mid court stuff. And if you're really lucky, you can get another team that you can play a bunch of points with to get warmed up. And that's really an ideal warm up.
Yeah, somebody just asked that question. Meredith said, what do you do when you're at a PPA tournament and there's no courts to warm up on, and you get a bye in the first round, so you play everybody who's already warmed up and, in the groove? That's a thing that happens. And sometimes you really have to do what you just said, which is to court hop. Just know where your court is going to be, well, hopefully, or have your bags handy and just get on and get it where you can. But I also don't mind just finding a patch. And if you can dink to each other and do some hands just to get your body moving and flowing, that's better than nothing. I will also warm up on a wall. If I'm by myself and my partner's not around, I will absolutely hit to myself on a wall. Again, just get my body flowing and getting moving.
You just have to make do with what you can. And sometimes it's doing fast hands just in the grass. Sometimes it's just hovering over courts that are about to be finished and jumping on quickly and getting as much practice as you can.
Practically, we need to hydrate before the day of the tournament. So obviously, don't have a bunch of drinks the day before. That can matter a lot. And you definitely want to hydrate beforehand. So if you're playing Saturday morning, be drinking tons of water and some electrolyte stuff on Friday. And make sure you're ready to roll, because your body needs it. It will absolutely need it the next day. I will say that one of the weird things that we're not used to, very often we'll get to the courts at 8 o'clock and we'll play till 10 or whatever, 10:30, and we'll go home and we'll move on with our day. Well, sometimes tournaments don't work like that, because you'll start playing at 8, you'll play one match, and then you have to wait until all the other matches go and they can get your second match scheduled. Well, that second match could be at 10:30. It could be an hour and a half after you played your first match. So you tend to want to feel like you have to warm up again. I think that's where some of the percussion massager devices can come in handy. And certainly if there's a hot tub where you are, it's nice to be able to jump in that for a few minutes and get your bones loosened up again. But I do find sometimes those things are tougher, especially as we get deeper into the higher age brackets of pickleball.
I hydrate like crazy basically every day. I drink a ton of water every day. I really think that you should do it the week before, or at least 3 or 4 days before. And I would like to use electrolytes during the tournament, or at least the day before, maybe a couple days before, use some electrolytes. One that I particularly like is Ultima, ULTIMA. It's not a sponsor, but it's super clean, great flavors. It's not a sponsor yet. Yes, we would like to have one. So I use Ultima during the tournaments. Cherry pomegranate happens to be my favorite. You can get it on Amazon. It's really, really important, in my estimation, to hydrate before the tournaments. It helps with your digestion, helps with your skin, it helps with your muscles in terms of being able to minimize injuries. There are so many benefits. So I'm a really, really big hydration component, really every single day.
Team Hydrate over there. Let's talk a little bit about bag prep. Now, tournaments are a little different for me in that I don't typically bring spare socks and spare shorts and spare shoes and shoelaces and things like that to normal rec play. If something like that happens, I just go home. But in tournaments, especially if you're out of town, it can really be a bummer. I once had to buy at a PPA event in Newport Beach, one of my shoes blew out, and I literally had to go over to Skechers in between games and buy a pair of shoes because my shoes blew up. Now, thankfully, it was a pair of Skechers, so they were happy to exchange them for me. But it was just like, man, it's weird to not be prepared for things like that. So I do think you definitely want to have spares of things that you might go through, like soft goods and towels and things like that. But I also like to have maybe, weights or new grips or whatever else you feel like you need. You may need them all. Something might happen where you need to do that kind of thing. What kind of stuff do you have in your tournament bag?
I have a small plastic bag that has grips, electrical tape and lead tape in case I need any adjustments. I have minimum 3 paddles with me just in case something happens. If you're playing a tournament, especially if you have any sort of testing going on at the tournament, you definitely need at least 2 paddles and ideally 3. Then I also have extra socks, extra shirts, extra sleeves. I happen to wear sleeves because the main reason I wear a sleeve actually on my right arm is because when I started playing in Florida, it was late summer and it was pretty humid. And so I had a lot of sweat going down into my arm and one wristband wasn't enough. So I found that the sleeves would diminish the sweat going down into my hand. So that's why I wear sleeves. So I have extra sleeves, I have extra sweatbands, and I have typically 1 extra pair of shorts. And ideally, when I'm traveling, I like to have an extra pair of shoes and obviously laces with the shoes because that's always helpful. I also have eyewear. So either eye protection for indoors or I have sunglasses for outdoors. In terms of food, I am one of those people that I typically don't eat standard food like sandwiches or wraps during the day unless I know I have a specific time interval that I'm going to be waiting. But typically with tournaments, sometimes you go on in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes you go a couple hours. You just really don't know when you're going to be going on. So I really don't like to have a sandwich because I just don't feel that great when I'm right about to go on the court and I've just had a meal. So I eat about every time I come off the court, I have some sort of bar, and I have a bunch of different types of protein bars that I have in my bag. If you are so inclined and you have some pain or some arthritis issues as we get older, many of us have that, you might want to try some Tylenol or naproxen or Aleve. If you have taken that before, you might want to have that in your bag, but you might want to have a few Band-Aids that can be helpful. I have a towel, I have my electrolyte solution, and then I also have 2 large bottles of water, one of which has electrolyte solution, the other one which has water. I like to go through this routine to make sure that I have all my checklist items. So I just know that there's not a lot of variability, that I don't get to the venue and all of a sudden I need, an extra pair of shoes because my laces might break or something might happen to a paddle and I don't want to go around scrambling for paddles, because that has happened to other players at tournaments. And when they go on the court, it really affects them mentally.
Well, it's funny. I remember a couple of years ago, they did What's in the Bag? And they would interview some of the top pros. And one of the top female pros just kept a little bit of rum in the bag just because it took the edge off, just took the old edge off. And I thought, I've heard worse ideas. And it was so funny because this dude that I used to play with just ended up putting a bottle of tequila or something in his bag. And he was maybe a 3-0 at the time. And I'm like, that's what you took from that?
The point is to establish a routine that works for you, know what you need and require, and then fulfill that. And the routine not only helps with you physically, it also helps mentally. When we approach the tournament, like I said before during the last episode, you can control 3 things: your effort, your attitude, and your preparation. We've talked about multiple different layers of preparation. If you're playing tournaments, you might as well go out there and give 100% every point, no matter whether you're up or down, whether your partner is playing well or not, whether you're playing well or not. Just go out there and give it 100%.
The good news for all of this is your first tournament doesn't have to be an APP or a PPA national event, which can feel pretty darn overwhelming sometime. Your club probably has tournaments. Enter those. Your region has tournaments. Enter those. You'll start seeing the people in your area that have that same competitive gene. You'll meet them, and then you'll probably end up pairing up with them in the future at some of the bigger stuff. So what would typically happen is you'll play one of these local events. You'll get along really well with someone either that you're playing with or playing against, and be like, hey, we've got the APP coming up in a couple months. Would you want to play? And that's how pairings get made. People are always asking, how do I find a good doubles partner? Well, you got to go to all these local events and start seeing the kind of people that you sync up with. I play with a few lefty guys. I play with a few righty guys. We don't always communicate that great. We don't always move together well. And then every once in a while, you play with someone where you just synchronize. And it's like, yeah, that's really good. whatever it is about my personality and my play really syncs up with their personality and their play. And we end up having a really good combination. And I don't know if this is accurate, but I always say like that partnership is 70% of the win, especially at a certain level where you get to a point where everyone's good for whatever reason. They've got the shots. You get to this 4-5 plus, 4-7, 5-5-0 level. Everybody basically has the shots. So it ends up being about team chemistry and how well you can endure those times. I was just down 1-10 the other day, and we came back and won 12-10 with a guy that I didn't know at all. And once we were done, I was like, dude, that was great. Do you want to drill? First of all, I was like, how old are you? I wish he was 50, but he wasn't. But I said, do you want to drill sometime? And so we're going to get together and start drilling together because he was just my kind of dude. Like it was the right pairing for us. So the point is,
that's great.
Those kinds of things where like you enter these smaller tournaments that don't cost a ton of money and just get the feeling of playing. It's really easy. I don't want to say easy, but it's much more comfortable when you are playing with people that you know. But that first tournament where you go outside of your region and now the entire bracket is full of people you don't know, maybe there's 2 or 3 that names you recognize, that's when things can get a little nervy. And it's nice to be able to do that when your stakes aren't super high and you haven't spent a ton of money and you're getting a hotel room and things like that.
This might be more difficult depending on the type of personality you are. Some people are just naturally perfect partners. I was not one of those people. I'm very intense and competitive, and I am a perfectionist. So, and I just tend to see things as I'm playing that sometimes patterns work out or they don't. And sometimes my partner is hitting balls that don't make sense to me. And I need to be able to communicate to my partner in a positive fashion. So that's something that I really needed to work on, because when I would get frustrated, it would not be at my partner. Yet if I'm frustrated, my partner feels that frustration and the end result is still the same. So even if I say something that is completely innocuous and I don't mean it in a bad way, yet my partner takes it in a bad way or they misinterpret it, whatever it is, their reality is their own reality. So what you're saying and what you're doing doesn't exist in a vacuum because you have a partner out there. And it might be something that's related to gender. So sometimes I can say some things to my male partner that I can't say to my female partner. And it might be something as simple as like, oh, that's not the shot. And we laugh at each other, or I'll make fun of, my shot. I hit a terrible shot. I'd say, oh, that's not the shot. And then my partner might hit a terrible shot. And I'd say, oh, that's not the shot. And, some of your partners, depending on their sensitivity, might be like, oh, wow, well, you're insulting me and you didn't mean it. It doesn't matter. That's how they took it.
I play with a dude, sometimes you're like, oh, my bad. You might say that on the court. Yeah. We always go, oh, you're bad. That's always the funny thing we do. And we laugh every time about it. So very easy to find tournaments anywhere. There are obviously a ton of websites, pickleball tournaments, pickleball brackets, pickleball.com. There's UTR, there's Senior Pro Tour, there's PPA. You are part of a region that probably plays a lot of pickleball. It's not hard to find pickleball tournaments in the world. You can just Google those things. So our idea is that in 2025, if you haven't played a tournament yet, this is your year. You will train yourself up. You will get in there and have a mentally strong game. You will enjoy the process. You will embrace the suck, because not everybody is as awesome as Mircea, who starts off at Open Pro and wins a couple of rounds out of the gates. But for some of us, it is a really great mental challenge, and it brings all the stuff we work on together. And I think we've talked about this a little bit in the last couple of episodes. When you're leaving that venue after you've had your tournament day, your brain is swimming with things that you want to work on. It is just something that happens. You're like, oh man, now that I see what the real competition is like, I need to work on this, this, and this. And that's really part of the fun of growing as a pickleball player, I think.
100%. And it's the ultimate goal that we're talking about during this very well-named podcast, 4.0 to Pro. While not all of us can achieve pro status, we can always strive to improve and get better. And one of the ways we can challenge ourselves and learn and maximize our potential is really using the benchmark of tournaments. So I absolutely love going to tournaments, and I would encourage everyone to sign up, or if you already have, keep doing it and get better and better. That's what we're trying to get everyone to do, and I hope everyone enjoys it.
Well, folks, you should be very well prepared for tournaments at this point. One thing I will say, though, is don't forget 402p.com/contest, and you can get this carbon-free true foam that is in my grubby little hands right now. Go do all the things. If you have any issues with it, just feel free to write me at picklehelp.com. I'll do my best to solve it. It's new for everybody. Mircea, sir, thank you so much for your insight and your brevity.
Thank you for listening, and next time, please cut me short.
I'm going to play you off with like Academy Award music. I can't hook. I have no way to hook.
Exactly.
Anyway, folks, you've now just listened to another episode or 3 of the 4.0 to Pro podcast. Go out there, get on the old pickleball courts, get some drilling in, and get yourself signed up for a tournament. I'll tell you what, if it's your first tournament ever and you signed up because you listened to these shows, write me at picklehelp.com. I don't know what we're going to do for you, but we'll figure something cool out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.